The year was 2019, and Isabella, just 16, was thrust into an experience that would mark her life forever. Amidst school holidays, her father, David, was traveling for work in Alabama, and to prevent his daughter from being alone in a hotel, he decided to send her to his sister Elizabeth's house on the outskirts of the Appalachian Mountains. Isabella, with no great expectations, accepted. Her destination was an isolated village with few houses, dimly lit streets, and an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow any trace of civilization. The reception was strange. Liam and Chloe, Isabella's cousins, were close to her in age, but they quickly made it clear that this place was not like others. They told stories of disappearances, of mysterious voices coming from the forest, and of presences that roamed the houses at night. Isabella, urban and skeptical, thought it was all an exaggeration. She didn't know that, soon, her incredulity would be put to the test. On the first night, Isabella slept on the floor of Chloe's room. The travel fatigue wasn't enough to make her relax. There was something in the air, a feeling of being watched, that at any moment something could emerge from the shadows. The room had a large window, nailed shut and covered by a brown sheet, according to Liam, so that nothing could see or enter. Isabella found it strange, but didn't question it. The early morning brought the first sign that something was wrong. Isabella woke up to a scratching sound coming from the window. She thought it was a dream, but seconds later another scratch came, accompanied by a guttural, low, disturbing icks. Startled, she woke Chloe, who, with chilling calm, said that was normal and that she just needed to ignore it for it to stop. Isabella was indignant at her cousin's nonchalance, but remembering the stories she had heard, she began to feel that perhaps she wasn't exaggerating. The next day, around 5 in the afternoon, Elizabeth explained the reason for the heavy atmosphere. The house had been bought for a very low price, and she had no choice. The neighbors warned. The surrounding forest was home to beings, some good, some bad, that came out at night looking for food. Cases of unexplained disappearances, voices of loved ones calling from the woods, inexplicable noises. Isabella listened to everything with a mix of disbelief and growing fear. On the second night, Isabella was awakened by something even more disturbing, a baby crying coming from the window. The sound was so real and distressing that she froze. Chloe also woke up and for the first time admitted it was the first time they had used a baby's cry. Terror settled in the room. Both remained motionless, listening to the lament until, finally, silence returned. Isabella couldn't sleep for the rest of the night, feeling vulnerable and powerless before the inexplicable. The next day dragged on. Isabella avoided looking at the window, and Chloe seemed quieter than ever. The atmosphere in the house was tense, as if everyone was waiting for something worse. The third night was the worst of all. Close to 2 in the morning, Isabella still hadn't been able to sleep. The silence was absolute until a loud bang on the window glass made her jump out of bed. Chloe woke up startled, asking what was happening. Before they could calm down, another bang came from downstairs, from the living room. Liam appeared at the bedroom door, pale, asking if they were making the noise. When they realized it was coming from the living room, they rushed to call Elizabeth. All together, they went down to the living room. One of the windows had its curtain open, and there, outside, a figure stood out in the darkness. Its hand was raised, ready to bang on the glass again. It was impossible to distinguish if it was a man or a woman, old or young. It was a dark blur with wide, staring eyes and a sinister, frozen smile on its face. Elizabeth, in despair, ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife, trying to intimidate the creature, but it didn't move. It only moved its mouth, as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. Time seemed to have stopped. The figure, motionless, stared at the four with an empty, menacing gaze. Seconds later, it began to slowly lower itself, disappearing from view. The terror was absolute. Liam ran to the window, trying to see where the creature had gone, but there was nothing there anymore. He closed the curtain and went back to the others, all in a state of shock. Elizabeth, trembling, decided that they would no longer stay in that house. The situation had crossed every limit. Until then, the noises were bearable, but that apparition was something no one was prepared to face. The next morning, the family began packing to leave. Isabella couldn't get the sinister smile of the figure in the window out of her head. Chloe and Liam, despite being used to the noises, were also shaken. Elizabeth, always strong, admitted that she had never experienced anything so terrifying. It was as if the house had been marked, as if something there had decided it was time to show itself. Isabella, once skeptical, now felt a deep fear of everything around her. Every shadow, every sound seemed to hide something menacing. The village, once just strange, was now clearly hostile. The feeling of isolation was suffocating, and the desire to leave only grew. While preparing to move, neighbors came to ask the reason for the sudden departure. Elizabeth broadly explained what had happened. Some neighbors just shook their heads, as if they had already expected it. Others said that, from time to time, the forest chose a house to haunt. Isabella realized that, for those who lived there, the supernatural was part of everyday life, something to learn to live with or to flee from. The family left the house that same afternoon. Isabella took one last look at the bedroom window, where it all began. She felt a shiver run down her spine, as if she was being watched. She knew she would never forget that feeling. The following days were a relief, but also filled with unease. Isabella returned home with her father, but the memories of her visit to the Appalachians never left her. At night, she had trouble sleeping, fearing to hear scratches or cries coming from the window. The fear was irrational, but real. Chloe and Liam also changed, becoming more reserved, less willing to talk about what happened. Elizabeth, now in another city, avoided any conversation about the old house. Isabella tried to research the village, but found little information. It seemed the place wanted to be forgotten, erased from the memory of those who passed through. Time passed, but the trauma remained. Isabella, now older, still feels a chill in her stomach remembering that night. The figure's smile in the window, the oppressive silence of the forest, the paralyzing fear, all of it was etched in her mind. She learned to respect the unknown and never to doubt the warnings of the elders. The story became a warning for friends and family. There are places where the inexplicable dwells, where fear is more real than anything you can see or touch. Isabella knows she'll never be the same after that visit. If you ever find yourself on the outskirts of the Appalachian Mountains, remember, danger may be outside your window or even whispering in the dark. What Isabella experienced is a reminder that there are forces we don't understand, and that fear, however irrational it may seem, is sometimes the only shield between us and the unknown.